What
two
makes you and
what
yeah, if
makes
we
you
were
you and
twins, why
yeah,
would we be different and
right.
not the same person? And this is kind of that idea that when we start talking about theoretically like cloning, if you clone somebody, is it the exact same person?
Yeah.
And that's where this whole idea, there used to be this long debate about nurture versus nature versus nurture. Do genes really write your whole story and say this is who they are no matter what? Or is it lived experience? And behavioralists came out and said, it's all lived experience. Forget genetics. And so this was the behavioralist movement. This was really big for a while, but it did a lot of damage because what the behavioralist movement did was to say everything that happens to somebody is based off of their perception and lived behavior or experience. And it was used to justify a lot of different types of things that were done politically, socially, and treated differently towards other people of different either racial identities, sexual orientations, whatever. It all became, well, this is all just learned behavior. And so it was used very, very negatively.
Okay.
And that movement came and went. Unfortunately, that movement had a lot more longstanding influence. And when you look at the American culture, it caught on in America and the US, the dominant culture, a lot more than other places in the world because of this idea that in the United States mythos about pulling yourself up from your bootstraps, you create your own destiny, it's all your own behaviors, you have like this ability to make whatever you want, which is this idea that people love to package and sell. And so this idea from behavioralists came off as really resonating with people. But the reality is that when we look at the genetic dispositions and we look at social factors, that has a big influence. And they both, it's not either or, it's both and. And so I'm kind of going down the rabbit hole here.
No, I like it.
But yeah, when you start looking at it, it's not just your genetics. Like you can influence your genetics based off of your lived experience, and your lived experience can then also be dictated by your genetics because you'll have a predisposition towards certain things. And so this is this reflective relationship. So when we start looking at twins, when we go back to what we were originally talking about with identical twins, what makes one person different than the second, you start looking at what is their lived experience and how does that lived experience then start affecting who they are. And so the idea that we start coming into is that everybody has these emotional kind of loads when it comes to different types of associations. So if we go back to the idea of snakes, like let's stick with this for a moment.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Like let's say they both grew up in a family where grandma says snakes are really evil. Stay away from snakes. They're poisonous. If you get bit by a snake, like it's over. And one twin just really holds on to that. But the other twin has a different type of an experience. Maybe there's a gardener snake that runs by and it's not poisonous. Suddenly they have a piece of data that conflicts the narrative. And it happens because they're temporally in a certain place, certain location, certain time. They have a certain lived experience that's slightly different than the other twin. The other twin maybe sees the snake and runs, but this twin, for whatever reason, stops and just says, what happens? Or maybe is paralyzed by fear and doesn't run, but the snake slithers over his foot and goes away. Suddenly there's a conflicting piece of data. And the more that data starts adding up, the more the narrative starts changing, saying, well, grandma's right that snakes are dangerous, but my lived experience doesn't always match up to that. Or I talk to somebody and they're a friend and I trust them and I trust their experience and they're not afraid of snakes. There might be something more. And suddenly you get this divergence where these two separate people have these lived experiences that are different. Now, this may be, when we start looking at any type of event, how you perceive it and experience is influenced by so many different variables. How are you feeling? Are you hungry? Are you tired? Are you in a good mood? Are you in a bad mood? Like, what are you thinking about at the time? All of that gets associated with the event that's happening. And so even if you have two identical people to begin with, they're watching the same event, they're both experiencing it slightly different. Even if it's just as simple as I'm looking at it from over here and you're looking at it from there, and we both have a different vantage point that we're looking at it at. Sound travels slightly different. The temperature might be a little different. Their experience, how they're facing me or not facing me or whatever, all of those little things start adding up. And as you continue to grow and fill up your psyche with these different types of events, you're processing data differently than the identical twin. So therefore, those little things can push somebody off on a different course so that they're overall different than the other person. At least there's a lot of times there's smaller differences, and you can see the differences in personality because of it. But if there's dramatic or really important life lived experiences, that could put somebody in motion pretty dramatically away from where the other person is going.